Okay. Hello, my name is Bruce Gillette. I am the moderator of Presbyterians for Earth Care. We are very grateful to have so many people joining us this evening for this webinar, and others who will be joining us in the coming days as they watch the recording on YouTube. And we hope many people will consider making use of it in their churches for programs in their buildings as well as online. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Let us pray. Loving God, the seasons are changing, and in some parts of this country it is getting quite cold. Whether it is sunny or raining, whether it is cold or warm, your love for us is without change. And as we prepare to celebrate the wonderful gifts of holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas, we pray, O Lord, we be guided by your Spirit, that we do it in a way that truly reflects the importance of these times together, and that they also be times that we celebrate in ways that are sensitive to how we impact your creation. Bless the presenters this evening, all who have gathered, and our continual work in caring for your creation. We pray it all in the name of the one whose birth we soon celebrate, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. This time, I'd invite a fellow steering committee member from Presbyterians for Earth Care, Charmel, to give the introduction for our first presenter.
Thanks so much. Welcome, everyone. I'm Charmel Roussel, and it is my privilege to introduce to you someone that we are very thrilled and honored to have with us tonight. Her name is Angela Peterson, and she is the program manager for Indigenous and local communities at One Tree Planted. And at One Tree Planted, she specializes in reforestation projects and that amplify our environmental impacts. She recently graduated with a Master's of International Affairs and Energy and the Environment from Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. And before all that, she worked at the international level in South America and Sub-Saharan Africa. So we're just very, very honored and pleased to have with us tonight Angela Peterson. Thank you so much, Angela.
Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction, and super excited to be here. I love talking about sustainability, and I'm just so thrilled to see so many other faces too who are interested in this topic. I will kick off this presentation a little bit, just giving a little overview of like who One Tree Planted is and why reforestation, which is one piece of the puzzle in solving climate change, is so important, and how we can all make a difference together. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen in 1 second. All right, so great. So One Tree Planted. Here is a brief introduction, and I'll try to get through this quite quick. And if any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box, and I'd be happy to answer them. So One Tree Planted is an international nonprofit that has one mission, and that is global reforestation. So we have worked in over 80 countries now. This is a little outdated. And this year, we actually just planted our 100th millionth tree, which is super exciting. And we have amazing partners all around the world who we work with in order to do so, including people like the World Resource Institute, which has been around for, years and years and years, the U.S. Forest Service, California. We do a lot of post-fire restoration work there too. And yeah, so as I said, we have a global reach. And the fun thing about being a global company is that each region is very distinct and unique. And so me being the program manager for Indigenous and local communities, I really focus on North and South America, where we do a lot of post-wildfire recovery projects and also work with Indigenous peoples to try to do capacity development so that they can be champions of their own reforestation projects with the resources that they need. Over in India and Asia, we actually do a lot of agroforestry projects, which means we help plant fruit trees. And so it's a good mix of food security and reducing heat in these local communities, as well as flooding, et cetera. The benefits go on. So with that, we create impact. And these are the main pillars that we really focus on. So clean air, and this is especially crucial when we plant in urban settings. So we do a lot of environmental justice work that focuses on planting trees in underserved communities to really help combat the urban heat effect and also the dirty air. So that is one pillar. Water, it can really reduce flooding in areas, especially near croplands, and it can purify water in watersheds as well. Next pillar, biodiversity. We focus on projects that really maximize biodiversity and to really protect local habitats. So some great projects of ours would be building wildlife corridors in Costa Rica, restoring the Brazilian Amazon and Atlantic forests. And we also restore the monarch butterfly forests in Mexico, which it's crazy to see our work creating an impact. Like you can see more monarch butterflies here in Minnesota, for example. So obviously social impact, like I briefly touched on. Health, trees have been proven to reduce anxiety and depression, and it can just overall give better mental health to people. And climate. Like I said earlier, reforestation, conservation, and reducing fossil fuel emissions, those are like 3 key actions to fighting the climate crisis, and all equally important. So talking about impact, we really focus on the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're in line with the United Nations to help achieve these. We do a lot of work with them and attend conferences and whatnot, and try to be as active as possible on this global scale. Really quick, our process we want to be as transparent as we can with all our donors. So once we receive the money, we distribute the funds to the local communities on the ground who are implementing these projects. The seedlings are grown, land is prepared, then it's planted and maintained. So we have really, really high survival rates because we're really focused on making sure that we're not just planting trees, but we're growing forests. So with that, we monitoring the trees, and we do a lot of like reporting and storytelling and really cool videos to show the impact of these projects. Our model just in more detail for now, I'll just skip it. We have this all on our website though, if you're even further curious into it. Talking about monitoring, we use satellite imagery and geotagged photos. We get really in depth and we try to maximize the technology out there in order to make sure that our trees are growing big and happy. And we also monitor like biodiversity increase within these forests that we're replanting back, and within local communities as well, taking surveys, making sure that, people are benefiting from these projects. So this is what I briefly touched on earlier, talking about the monarch forest in Mexico that we are replanting. It says 500,000 trees in 2022, and across 2023, we're about, I think, at 2 million now, which is very, very exciting. Here's a highlight of our Thailand project that we work with the hill tribes there. And this is one that really focuses on social impact just as much as climate impact. So these are my favorite projects and they're very exciting. But yeah, our motto is that together we're building a forest. And so every tree matters, and how we operate, it's $1 for one tree. And so it's really cool to see, maybe 5 or 6 families even together can build back an entire forest that was burnt down in a wildfire, or like clear cut it for agriculture purposes. So it's very, very exciting work. With that, we can touch on how to be sustainable. Oops, sorry, I'm just trying to present this really quick. Don't know why that's not letting me. Present, there we go. So obviously there's multiple ways to be sustainable, and these are just a few that we're going to touch on. But even if it's one small, tiny change, they all compound to make a difference. And that tends to be the biggest inhibitor to climate action, is just like the sheer grandness of the problem. But every micro step really makes an impact into the future. So as we enter this holiday season, you may be wondering how to reduce your impact and still enjoy all of your favorite traditions while also having a sustainable holiday season. But have no fear, you can make plenty wonderful Christmas or Thanksgiving memories and have a lower environmental impact. So that's our little note at One Tree Planted that we like to say. So the first one is use sustainable holiday gift wrap. So it's a lot of text, and I'll touch over it quickly, but most mass-produced wrapping paper and gift bags are printed using unsustainable inks and are coated in shiny foils, which they are not recyclable. So there's a lot of creative ideas to wrap gifts, including old maps, old comics, newspaper. You can also use fabrics that can be reused over and over again. And you can snazz them up with colorful bows or twine or pressed leaves, which I really like, and pine cones. So there's a bunch of ways to get creative to reduce that single-use waste, which is the real big issue that we want to try to reduce more so. Prepare an eco-friendly feast. So food has a massive impact on climate. It's in the top 3. And while preparing your favorite dishes, it would be really great, and it's very important to support local farmers that grow sustainable meat and produce. Obviously, it's a little bit tougher around the Christmas time, depending what climate you live in, but the more local you can buy, the better. So it's just about making these small little changes. Get a real sustainable Christmas tree. So this is something that people often have a lot of questions with, because you are cutting down a tree to have a Christmas tree, but it's much better than plastic, because plastic can never ever break down. So if you are buying and switching out plastic trees, that's creating a massive waste that will never decompose. And I'm saying sustainable Christmas trees because some farmers do use heavy pesticides and herbicides, which can get into the water, and that's very pollutant. So just doing a basic research, you can even call the local farmers in your area to see what sorts of practices they use. But that could be a very fun thing to do while being more sustainable. Switch to LED holiday lights. Not only is this sustainable for the environment, but it's actually sustainable for you economically speaking, because it's much cheaper, because they use up to 90% less energy. And they also don't burn out as quick. So hopefully we'll never have to replace them, or maybe once or twice in a lifetime. So it's a simple switch that can save you money and save the environment. Give sustainable Christmas gifts. So these are things that could be either reused or recycled, or here at One Tree Planted, we love to promote our companies who are our partners. So we have a whole article that we just released last week that goes further into details. We have 33 amazing partners who will plant for every product they sell. They'll plant a tree, or some will even plant up to 10 or 100 trees. But just looking for those companies that are mission driven and that want to make an impact with the things that they are selling to their consumers. So these are all really great options. And if you support them, you're also supporting One Tree Planted, which is very, very great to me. Do a gift swap. So maybe change some traditions, and instead of, just exchanging gifts, it'd be fun to do some sort of swap. So an old puzzle that you've done before that you know you won't do it again, why not just regift that? It's not tacky, it's actually very fun. Me and my friends do it all the time, and it's a really great way to be more sustainable and just recycle those things that you'll probably never use again. Recycle your Christmas tree. So on that notion of buying a sustainable Christmas tree, it's really important to recycle it. Every year, over 10 million Christmas trees end up in landfills where they don't decompose as quickly as they would if they were recycled in the right way, whether that be through yard waste or some sort of scheme like that. So especially living in an urban setting, it can be very challenging to dispose these trees, but often many cities are now offering solutions to do this. So just look into your local programs, look into your local governments, etc. But there will most likely be something that could help you. So, and last but not least, donate to charity or donate to One Tree Planted. Nonprofits are extremely skilled at driving high impact for low cost. And so I know we all want to do our part, and not everybody can be experts in everything. And so our job all day, every day is to maximize the impact with the dollars that we receive. And so your donations can be transformed into so much impact, but obviously not just One Tree Planted. There's a multitude of amazing charities out there, especially if we're looking into conservation or reforestation or fossil fuel reductions. There's so many great ones. So just do your research, select one that you are confident with. And yeah, that is a great way. So on that note, Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully have a prosperous new year. And that's from everybody at One Tree Planted. And before I stop sharing my screen, I'm just going to show quickly our website. We have these blogs that I can send around. The new one for Christmas is going to have a few new updated ideas, and that should be coming out towards in about a couple of weeks, the end of November. So this is more of the sustainable ideas for the holidays that I just went over a few. And then we also have this list of the 33 unique eco-friendly gifts for the holidays. And we just published this last week. So feel free to head out to our website and check those out. And yeah, happy to answer any questions later. Okay, I'm seeing a couple. Have you heard of the moringa tree? Yeah, so we actually plant only native species based off the local planters in the region. So we'll plant based off whatever species is requested. And yes, we have worked with the Arbor Day Foundation in the past, and they're absolutely amazing too. So I think
what is your website?
Yep, it's called One Tree Planted. I'll put it in the chat right now. .org.
.org. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I wondered if you could say something about, you mentioned eating local foods, but I wondered if you could touch on the impact of consuming large quantities of meat at our holiday gatherings, and when we could have more plant-based meals in mind, maybe not total elimination of meat, but just more of a focus on plant-based meals and how that benefits the planet.
Definitely, yeah. So my philosophy is like, I hate to tell people that they can't do something because I feel like that's never a productive conversation. And meat obviously does have quite a large impact on the environment between the production of all the water and the food that's needed to feed livestock, to hormones and antibiotics that are used that can get into the water, to the transportation of those animals to the local supermarket. There's a very large impact. Plant-based foods obviously don't have quite the same similar impact. So if you want to switch up your main courses for more veggie-based options as well, that's fantastic. Of course, just everything in moderation, but yeah, always advocating for plant-based as well. but I do love a good turkey. So, but if you are being a person from Minnesota, those turkeys all over. So if you can get one of those local ones, that's just 10 times better.
We will give people a chance to ask you more questions. Why don't we move to our next presenter for the time being, and then we'll have lots of time for questions and answers. There is, in case people are wondering, an official bio for Jessica. It's on the National Presbyterian website, and I'll give you the quick summary that she is the Associate for Sustainable Living and Earth Care Concerns for the Presbyterian Hunger Program. She resources Presbyterians as they address issues of faith, lifestyle choices, and sustainability. She manages Earth Care Congregation and Hunger Action Advocate networks. Her background includes an emphasis in liberation theology and international studies, with time spent in Zambia, Mozambique, Jamaica, Nicaragua, and Haiti. Beyond the Presbyterian Church, I have seen her show up in a variety of ecumenical work as well, with Creation Justice Ministries, with the One Home, One Future interfaith group. So she helps beyond Presbyterians in caring for God's creation, and she is here to share some of the resources our church has to offer. Take it away, Jessica, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you all for having me here this evening. Give me just a second and I will pull up a couple of slides that I have as well. So yeah, like Bruce shared, I get to do all of that great work, both for the denomination and also connecting to some of our ecumenical partners and some of our other national and international partners doing great work. I loved getting to hear about the tree planting work that Angela's group is doing, and hearing what those pillars are of how that work is being grounded and what that process looks like. Some of you might know that the Presbyterians for Earth Care, along with the Hunger Program and some mission coworkers and some other groups, we've been doing a lot of promotion around the Presbyterian Tree Fund, which gives Presbyterians the option to donate to a fund. And just in September, we were able to disperse the first round of grants to organizations that are doing tree planting and other silvopasture and carbon sequestration work, both here in the US and our first international partner in Peru. So all of that great environmental work gets to live with the Presbyterian Hunger Program. And the focus there obviously is alleviating hunger and eliminating its root causes. But we know that one of those underlying dynamics of why people are hungry is because some people have had the privilege and opportunity to accumulate more wealth and privilege than other parts of our population. And so that's part of why we also talk about economic justice issues as well. And so that's why we see the connections between those two things. And so one of the things that we know is really important, just like Angela said, is, little small changes can make they add up to make a big difference. And one of those, as part of that, it's really important that we be mindful of all of the things that we're doing. So it might seem small that maybe we're, reusing some fabric or some newspaper or some magazines instead of just running to the store and buying wrapping paper. But if you look at all of what ends up in a landfill over time, that makes a big difference. Or if maybe you have some family treasures and your children or grandchildren would maybe really love to have that instead of something new purchased from the store that might not be as well made or last as long. Or maybe there are recipes or family stories or family photographs that could be created and repurposed. So I loved hearing Angela's suggestions about just how we do that mindfulness piece to help make our holidays different. And so there are lots of great organizations that we're all working towards the same goal and have some of the same mindfulness stuff in mind, but wanted to remind folks that there are lots of great Presbyterian specific resources. So in addition to being able to use this webinar as a tool to talk to your congregations or your Sunday school classes or that kind of thing, about how you do holidays more sustainably, the Hunger Program also offers resources to help you do that. So two things specifically I wanted to point out, if you haven't seen them, we have some posters about with some of these suggestions. So some of the concise things that Angela shared, like what does it mean to rethink our Thanksgiving meal? How do we keep that local? How do we remember to the prayers and the mindfulness around eating? How do we keep that based in our faith and in our faith practices? How do we keep that more simple? So whether that is, making sure we're using locally sourced ingredients, if that's doing more plant-based options rather than meat-based options, how do we do that in a healthy way, whether that's ingredients or healthy for the environment in terms of how far it had to come? And how do we find the most fair trade ways of being able to do that? Just Living is a series that the Hunger Program offers that looks at some of these different issues and offers some of those tips. So things about in autumn, how do we do that more sustainably? Thanksgiving that maybe looks a little bit different, how we reclaim the Advent and Christmas season, and then a couple of pieces around water and green living in general. Something else that we also offer is a resource called Considering Our Treasure that focuses on the Luke passage, but it's broken down in terms of our economy and where we spend our money, that there are, a list of specific kind of categories of where our money goes or how it might be distributed. So some of that is debt, some of that is education, some of it is giving, some of it is around food. And so we've put this resource together. It's something that you can use that, as an individual or doing some things with your family as you're being more mindful, or your church can use this and do it together as a group. But the resource is broken down. So for each of these categories, economic categories, I guess you would say, there is a scripture for reflection and there's some space for you to write about that a little bit. There's a little passage about some learning things that if you're doing it for a Sunday school, that can be adapted and some more content can be filled in there. And then there's a section about how do we embody our faith with these ideas in mind. So that there are some personal actions that we can take, that there are options for us to do some studying, and there's ways as a group or as individuals that we can kind of engage our habits around this specific topic. So I pulled giving out since that has a direct holiday piece. So you can kind of see that there. So I'm going to stop sharing here. But so mostly I was really thankful for the opportunity and just want to let you know that the Hunger Program is here. If you're interested in exploring these topics, there are things that we can connect you to. Some of those things are offered by our partners, but we're here and want to be able to resource folks as they're talking about that. And if you need some great visual things, we can connect you to that. If you need some video clips to be able to talk about it, we have some of that available. And obviously PEC will have this great webinar that you can share with your churches and other groups as well. So that is my quick share, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that come up as well.
Jessica, could you put in the chat links to the resources you mentioned?
I actually already did before I started speaking, so
I haven't been looking at the chat that much, so glad to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So are there any, I think we're now open for questions from anybody for either one of our presenters, and we do also are very open to people sharing, if they have some additional ideas for us to consider. if you can raise your hand, and if you are joining us, I'm not sure where it is on a PC, but on the Macs, at the bottom of the screen, they have a reaction icon. And if you click that, one of the options is raising your hand, and that way we can easily have you at the top of the screen. As we have right now, take it away. What's your question or comment?
Thanks. My question's for Angela. And I'd like to know how you all verify that a tree that gets planted actually grows to the point to where it captures carbon. You have to have it in the ground. My understanding is if you take a regular deciduous tree growing in the northeastern US, it has to be about age 10 to 12 before it really starts taking carbon up in a meaningful way, and then takes up about 50 pounds per year thereafter. So my question is, how do you verify that in the various environmental areas in which you work?
Yeah, definitely. And I actually work in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of projects there. So once we do our monitoring up to 3 years, because at 3 years, that seedling should be strong enough on its own to grow into a tree. So it's hit enough maturity that it doesn't need our care anymore, that tree should be able to grow. We have survival rates on an average of 80% right now, but our organization was only founded 8 years ago. So we haven't been able to see yet 10 years out, 15 years out. And we want to make it clear that we are not a carbon credit company. We work with local communities who these lands, they're not just lands or territories. They have deeper cultural and deeper connections to these lands. So there's a lot of element of trust with our local partners. And that's why half of our jobs is just to curate these relationships with our partners on the ground. And so, yeah, we also, if people are more interested in the carbon credit side, we also do sell carbon credits through a carbon project developer. But those projects tend to be much more expensive and complicated, and we're just more so focused on reforestation. But a lot of them are safeguarded because a lot of them do tend to be on forest land protected by governments around the world, or indigenous communities, local communities, et cetera. So.
Well, thanks a lot. And I guess I use you to offset your program to offset my personal carbon. And I've kind of figured out how many trees I have to have in the ground growing for the next 40 years to offset what I've done over the last 30 plus another 20 I might live. And so now I'll use the multiplier 1.2 to figure out the number of trees I gotta give to you every year. So thanks, I appreciate it.
That's so awesome. Great to hear. Thanks for the question.
Other questions or comments?
I see that Mr. Solomon has a question. He's raising his hand.
Dr. Solomon?
Oh, you might be muted. Oh.
Yeah, Dr. Solomon, you're muted.
Am I audible to you?
I can hear you.
Can you hear? Yes.
Yes.
I got two questions. Number one is, during the rainy season, we plant number of trees in each and every village. All of a sudden, the water scarcity comes in. At that particular time, we have difficulty in sustaining the trees. Therefore, whatever effort we put, that go in vain. Number two, second question is, we are now constructing some trees in the church compound. What kind of trees you like to have? We have been planting not fruit trees, but other fruit trees comes very quickly. Some people are telling you got to only for fruit trees. What's your suggestion? Thank you.
Yeah. So with water and just natural elements in general, our philosophy is that we maintain these trees for 3 years, and by year 3, they should be strong enough. Obviously we can't afford to the frequent watering, especially if irrigation is not in these areas. But we do fund for 3 years for things to get watered, but and up after that, it's more so nature. But with that being said, the survival rate tends to still hang around 80%, which is really great. So it's about quality seedlings by getting really good, baby trees in the ground that are healthy. And then on your second question about, is it more so about intermixing fruit trees with other types of non-fruit trees?
Yes, especially, wait a minute, especially my church authorities want to plant trees from the Old Testament. There are some reference about trees in Old Testament. So the pastor of my church likes to have trees which are referred in the Old Testament. But the young people say, don't go to Old Testament, you go for hybrid trees which gives more fruit and it grows very quickly. So there are some dilemmas in the church level. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the great thing about One Tree Plant It and how our model works in general is that I don't really have an opinion and I'm not the expert. We really work with those local planters on the ground who do have the expertise to the local region, to the local city and the local climate. And so I'd be more than happy to ask our team in India or wherever you're located. But not sure.
I am in India, in Madras. We do plant a good number of trees, but unfortunately, the first year, as I mentioned earlier, the trees come up. But when you go there the next year, the trees are not seen. Therefore, there is an urgent need to sustain it, not to plant the number of trees. So if I plant 100 trees and grow it for 3 years, that is sufficient. So in that way only we have difficulties.
Yeah, and I'm happy to pass around my email too and answer these questions further in depth later as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
you are very great.
Are there other questions or comments?
I have a question. I'm sorry I joined late. I was in another meeting and just couldn't leave because I was the chair. And I have a question about the 15, the sheet from your website about 15 practices that you can do for a sustainable Christmas. Can that be copied and used like on the Virginia Interfaith Power and Light website, which is hopefully partnered with you?
Yeah, so what we recommend is don't copy and paste it, just use our link that will take people to our website, if that's all right.
Sure.
Great. Yeah, feel free to pass it on to whoever you want then.
Other questions and comments? Nancy. Hello, Nancy. Good to see you. You're muted, I think. Nancy, could you unmute, please?
Okay.
There it is, yeah.
That should work. Okay. Well, I'll start again. Thank you so much for gathering us together about trees. I am a tree person, and so I love what we are talking about. Recently, though, I have been reading Yes Magazine, for example, the latest magazine, and also a New York Times article that came out yesterday and it's about restoration of forest isn't enough by itself. And I know that we all accept that. But it's interesting that some of the studies say things like, there are companies, we have to be careful that we don't lead to trees being wrongly painted as the silver bullet for climate change and therefore and go right ahead using fossil fuels and whatnot. I mean, that sounds a little cynical, but I think it's realistic. And so all the efforts to plant trees are wonderful, but they're not to take the place of cutting back on fossil fuels and trying to figure out other things. One of the things that that comes out is how important it is to support the survival of old growth forests, because that's where the great amount of sequestration happens. So I hope that I can take it upon myself and others can to help support tree planters, but also support the trees that are already doing their job for us. And the one other thing that gets brought up again and again was that there is an accusation by some scientists and writers that there's inappropriate tree planting on grasslands and other non-forest ecosystems, talking about how much CO2 is stored underneath the earth by grasses and all, whereas forest fires destroy the above ground CO2 helpers that of mature forests. So those are just some things that I'm thinking about and just want to share, not as a rebuttal, but as an addition.
No, Nancy, I'm so glad you brought this up because this is like one of my favorite topics to talk about. Because we tend to forget that the biosphere creates the atmosphere and the atmosphere creates the biosphere. They work in harmony. And so there's 3 pillars that we love to preach, which is the fossil fuel reduction, the conservation, and then the restoration. And they're all 3 equally pieces of the pie, and we cannot do one with the other. So highly advocate all 3 pillars at the same point. And then lastly, with the for planting on grasslands. So that's afforestation, which is a whole different specialty. And in my personal opinion, a lot more science has to go into it to be done so responsible. We really specialize in deforestation. So only previous forests that were cut down or burnt by wildfires or disease outbreaks that naturally on their own are unable to regenerate for a multitude of purposes. So.
Well, thank you, Angela.
Yeah.
Next one, I think, is Laura.
I just wanted to mention, we've got 2 computers going here. Tom, can you turn your sound off? I wanted to mention that our church has decided that a project for the holidays would be to encourage our church members to offset their holiday travel. And you might be interested to know that we have recommended first that people calculate their what their air travel would do to the environment. And then secondly, that they make a donation either to the Presbyterian Tree Fund or One Tree Planted as reputable places for planting trees.
Thank you for that excellent point. Our PEC recently had a webinar on transportation, and maybe Mindy, you could put the link to that webinar in the chat, because it covers all aspects, not just air travel, but comparing carbon footprints with cars and with mass transit, all kinds of things. It's a wonderful talk, and it would be well worth sharing that link with your congregations, maybe in a weekly email as people are planning their holiday traveling. Fawn, you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. Copper Creek Church in Champaign, Illinois, which is where I'm at right now. And I joined and helped, did a burn on their 2-acre prairie. And they have land that's tall grass prairie. That's what it is right here. This is the tall grass prairie. So the natural ecosystem is that. But along waterways, you get the trees. So I was just kind of responding to Angela's comment that, you know, in this area, the burning takes down and recycles the carbon in, say, like grasses and those perennials that have herbage that can be burnt. It goes fast and it's not a big conflagration. But what I'm trying to say is that don't think of prairie as being just like, oh, I guess we're kind of stuck with it. There's some really deep-rooted plants in prairie ecosystems that go down a long way. And those plants, some of them, the silphiums, they live 100 years, the century plant. So we're looking at sort of an equivalent in a way to a forest if you think about the carbon sequestration. And I also just wanted to say that, Mr. Solomon, I put a comment in there. You got to plant persimmons. They're in the Bible 100 times. Diosporus kaki would be your choice for where you might be, which sounds like you might be from Asia, from India, perhaps. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
I better call on the next man because his first name is Forrest. Forrest Arnold, please share what you'd like to with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, this one's for Angela. The U.S. Forest Service has developed biochar as a way for carbon sequestration and to help with forest production. Another angle is the hemp economy. Hemp sequesters carbon very well, and it also is good fiber replacement for many of your tree products, for floors and lumbers and hempcrete and so forth, as a way to offset the demand for forest products. So that would be another way to get good sequestration and less pressure on the forest.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely. Thank you.
I think Tom is next. Tom Pappas, would you like to share a comment or a question? Where is Tom?
Bruce, he shook his head no. He shook his head no.
Don't have a comment.
All right, that's fine. I will share with you all a creative holiday gift that we all have family and friends who basically maybe has everything they need. But here is a creative way of giving a gift from the Mennonite Central Committee. They have what's called Book Savers in Hagerstown, Maryland. And take a look at this. They have a ornament, the simple ornament. You can have it printed off. You can have a children illustrated one, but a simple ornament. And behind it is a small envelope of wildflowers seeds. And the idea is you give a gift that covers the cost of a tree, a fruit tree, that the Mennonite Central Committee will be planting somewhere in their organization throughout the world. And the recipient gets the ornament for their tree, and they also get a little packet of wildflowers. And I think, you know, this would be a great thing for people to do for Plant One Tree or for the Presbyterian Tree Project. You know, make your own ornament, put a little envelope on the back of it, give it to family and friends as a Christmas gift, and then give money on on the gift receiver's behalf to plant trees. So just an idea for you to ponder. Charmel, you had a question or comment?
I have a question because biochar was mentioned, and I'm not sure everybody knows what that is. So could somebody explain biochar and how that is beneficial?
I brought it up. In a kiln, you basically burn wood scraps and to a higher heat, and then use compost to get bioreactions to go, and then it stays in the soil, and it's a good soil amendment, and it sequesters carbon. So if you have an area that's been deforested or burned, some of that material could be put in these kilns and processed in such a way to give you a much more a better soil amendment and sequester carbon. I know the Forest Service has developed different size kilns, and when they're culling forests and so forth, they use this regularly. You can buy it as an amendment even on Amazon to improve your own soil.
Other questions or comments, friends? I have one. What about tree planting in the inner city?
Yeah, so we have a whole urban forestry department, I would say. And so we have a really great geospatial analyst on our team. So we locate areas with the least tree equity score. So these neighborhoods tend to be, upwards of 5 degrees hotter than this areas 2 minutes away that have more trees. And often the decision of where trees are located in cities and where they are not tends to be on socioeconomic class divides, unfortunately so, and other racial divides as well. And so we work with communities to try to bring more tree justice in areas where it's needed most for, health purposes, mental health purposes, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Shall I ask you a question? Jessica?
She's there. What's your question?
I'm here.
Got muted.
You have to unmute, Dr. Solomon. You can't.
There are good number of trees called palm trees. Palm. You know that palm trees? PALM. That grows in a height, 30 to 40 feet height. So people says if you plant palm trees that doesn't take much water, they preserve the soil. Therefore, there are nearly 100,000 trees are attempted to plant. So it is growing now. What's the suggestion? So palm tree.
I'm not sure that I can speak to that. My area of expertise is not in tree planting. I'm not sure if Angela maybe has something that she can share in terms of that.
Yeah, so we actually don't plant palm. A lot of times palm tends to be planted in plantation style, and they often will deforest areas to plant palm. So it's something that can potentially be done sustainable, but it's just not our expertise, nor would we know how to drive or monitor impact with that. So yeah, we just kind of stay away from palm.
Do you advise it is better to plant palm trees, and do you support for that venture? Because in that area, in southern part of India, the tip of India, the palm trees were planted many years that stopped erosion of soil along the water bodies and along the seashore. But now some corporates come and cut it for their roofing and construction purpose. Again, we, the non-profit organization, want to plant at least 100,000 palm trees next year. What's your suggestion?
Yeah, I would definitely say reach out to me and I can connect you with the appropriate people on the team who would be more equipped to answer these questions for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
The Presbyterian Hunger Program does support a program called Eco Palms, which are grown, I believe, in Guatemala, right, Jessica?
Yeah, in the Mayan biosphere, that's a little bit of a different, that particular kind of palm is the chate palm, and it's a little bit different than what is grown, the palm trees I think that you're talking about. But yes, but while we're talking about that, Eco Palms, the orders will open in January. That's another great way to think responsibly and mindfully about the ways we're incorporating things into our holiday celebration. So if you're interested in more about that, I can send you information too.
Thank you. Please send information. Because the palm, another thing is the palm trees, they produce many good things. They are locally, it is in those days, people used there for livelihood. So now it has come down. Therefore, again, this is our duty to bring up. So if you are able to participate in this program, I will be very, very thankful to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Carter, Dr. Carter. You have to unmute.
Okay. I love all these thoughts. Here at New Hope at Church of Reconciliation in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, we're putting out a green ways to save energy and care for creation while celebrating the holidays by gift giving. And some of the things have to do, at least indirectly, with trees. And one of them is consider contributing toward a scholarship at one of our Presbyterian camp and counseling and conference centers, because they are often wonderful preserves of trees that otherwise would have gone to, some kind of housing that wasn't exactly helping others. We also have in the area something called the Triangle Land Conservancy. And I think probably all of us have some kind of equivalent in the area where we live. And it's good to give donations to things like that. Someone also offered on the list we have is decorate a tree for birds, and go to buy decorations from thrift shops or garage sales, and and hang them on the trees, to remind ourselves of just the wonderful connection that there is between trees and birds and just all of creation. So thanks.
Nancy, if you could share that list with Mindy, we could include it in this webinar's webpage. So if you could pass that on to Mindy, that'd be wonderful.
Wonderful. I think we're getting it in its final stages in the next couple of weeks, but I will remember that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions or comments, friends? Well, pretty quick here. We're going to stop the recording because it is close to an hour, isn't it, Mindy?
Sally Dunn had her hand raised.
Okay, I'm not wanting to
Oh, okay.
cut off any questions. I just want to be conscious that at some point we're going to stop. Let's do Sally and then Lynn. Sally?
Trying to unmute. There we go. Hi. I have some ideas of ways to reduce the pressure that we all have on the things that trees can make, specifically paper. We have a composting program at church, but I'm realizing that buying compostable paper plates and compostable cups is using trees. So we try very hard to use all plates, all regular cups. In my own home, we don't use paper towels. You can use towels, plain towels to pick up and clean up. We do not use paper napkins. I use cloth napkins. We do not use paper tablecloths or anything like that because you can always use the cloth. I have tablecloths that came from when I got married in 1970. They last a long time. the other thing, the only thing that's really hard, we try not to use Kleenex. I don't know how you get along without toilet paper. So if someone has a recommendation on that, I'd say go for that, please. But there are so many things that we go for conveniently, and you think you're doing something better, and then you realize that, gee, it's so easy. It's easier to buy the compostable plates to make it easier to set up your table or whatever. But for the little bit of extra time that it takes to use real china and real glasses, you can make a bigger difference.
Thank you for that comment. In case you're not aware, November 19th is World Toilet Day. And there are alternative ways, at least to minimize the use of toilet paper. That's another program.
Actually, on that note too, part of that 33 gift idea is to be more sustainable. The last one, number 33, is we actually partner with a brand who makes more sustainable toilet paper. So be sure to check that out.
Thank you.
Is that Who Gives a Crap, or that's the one we're familiar with? Do you know that one?
It is called Real Paper.
Okay. Lynn, what do you have for us?
Coming up on November 26th on the Presbyterian planning calendar is Eradicate Systemic Poverty Sunday. Now, I realize that in some ways this entire webinar has been about eradicating systemic poverty, but is there a way that you could sort of shorten it up, or what you could say about how to eradicate systemic poverty?
Yeah, I wish I had the answers to that. That would be great. Bruce, do you want to say something?
I was going to say Jessica might have a few things since she works on the national staff, and that's part of the emphasis, I believe, that the hunger program helps resource, right, Jessica?
I think that we do, along with a few other offices. I'm not sure that I understood entirely what the question was. Were you asking for if you were sharing with a congregation, what is the a quick way to describe how we eradicate? Can you
No, I don't need to know what it is, because there's materials on the Presbyterian website that sums it up as those passages in Matthew 25 about hunger and this and that, that to get taken together as systemic poverty. And I'm just going to stick with that rather than spending a lot of technical time. But I'd like to have some things that could be some sermon illustrations, some things that people could do, as individuals, as congregations, to eradicate systemic poverty.
So quickly, one of the things that I think ties into some of the suggestions we saw from Angela is making sure that we are supporting local farmers, making sure that we're supporting fair trade, making sure that we are connected to options locally for fair wages and labor are three quick things. Also, the work that the work that Earth Care congregations are doing to make environments more livable is one of the ways that we work to eradicate systemic poverty. Kind of like I was talking about, the problem isn't just that there isn't enough, it's how some people accumulate more wealth and privilege and power while others don't have access to that. The same is true about environments and green space and things in nature that environmental racism is a part of that, because it's not just where things are and are not, but who has access to what parts of our environment as well. So those are maybe a couple of quick things that I would say.
One of the news reports of this day is the US government has released the 5th National Climate Assessment, which basically says there's no place in the USA that is safe from climate change. And what we do on multiple levels to counter the climate crisis is significant in helping especially the poor because they disproportionately are impacted by the climate crisis. I'm sure Dr. Solomon would be quick to agree that India has incredible challenges with extreme heat that other parts of the world may not have, even though those other parts of the world, including the United States, produce disproportionately too much to the climate crisis. So, part of what we do on multiple levels to counter the climate crisis can also help in the issues of economic justice. Other questions or comments? I think maybe we should stop the recording, but then continue to be open to people's comments and questions. We want to try to keep this